I'm actually beginning to feel the kind of energy rising as we're sort of approaching the new year. My name is Suryagupta, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you, to sort of spend time really in this way at this significant time that we're in. It's good to spend time anytime actually at the centre, meditating, connecting, sharing. It's always a pleasure and a joy. And there are times that it's particularly important to mark, and we're in one of those times now. One of my favourite quotes is from Margaret Mead, who's a cultural anthropologist, and she said, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed, thoughtful individuals to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has." So that's what we are right now. We are a group of individuals, thoughtful individuals who are here wanting to bring some change into being. And let's not underestimate that. Let's not underestimate the significance of, all of us coming together, of you deciding, choosing to be in this space at this time with others. Yeah. And this is also to those of us online, those of you online as well. Welcome. Yeah. So yes, it's so whether you've been here, it's your first time at the centre. Is it anyone first time at the centre? Great, very warm welcome. So whether you're here for the very first time, whether you've been coming for years or just recently, it's one of our traditions to mark the new year in this way, with reflection, with contemplation, with sharing together. And this moment of coming together is a kind of collective experience that's happening around the world. We're having a particular manifestation of it, but people are coming together right now throughout the world. All those sort of following the Gregorian calendar. So there's not everybody celebrates the New Year exactly at this time, as we know. But most of the world now celebrates this Gregorian calendar New Year at this time. And, and it's been done for many, many years. So it's something that we're sort of, it's so part of our psyche, our collective psyche, to want to mark this particular occasion in some way. I kind of was thinking of it like a sort of almost an energetic pull that you have to kind of do something. And I've had all kinds of New Year's Eves. I've had the New Year's Eves where I was like, looking for a party to go to, looking for an invitation, deciding not to do anything, just watching TV or being online. I've had all kinds of New Year's, most of which I don't remember, I have to say. I do remember the ones which had some thought to it, which had some reflection involved in it, where I really brought myself into relationship with myself and others. I remember those ones much more. But I feel like there's generally an energetic pull to come together or to acknowledge in some way. And it's almost as if, I sort of was thinking of it, it's almost like we know there's something significant. We know that something of that significance is to do with time. Somehow we're acknowledging in this moment the passing of time. We're acknowledging where we are in the present. And many of us, many people, even if you don't really want to, end up looking back at the previous year. Brody Matt was saying you were forced to do so. But you do look back, right? You look back, even it just flashes of, you might do it in a very formal way. You might do it in just a casual way, but there's something around looking back at the previous year. I was on Instagram today. And there's loads of those kind of like my year to 2024, going on. And it looks fantastic. I'm just like, this collage that people put together, I'm just like, your life looks amazing, And then there were a few honest ones that said, all of these things happened, and I also suffered from depression, and I had to come off social media. So I was quite touched by those ones, because it was like an honest recognition of the journey of a year and the journey of a life that happens in time. And a journey of a life that happens in time, it will always be those ups and downs. It's just part of what we're born into. So it felt really, I just really responded to those ones that were like, there was also this going on in my experience. So there's this kind of natural sort of looking back, an acknowledgement of the present. And there's something around coming together collectively, whether you do that, sitting at home watching the fireworks, as I've done at times, or just looking at the papers the next day and seeing all the different celebrations around the world, or whether you've been on retreat, however you've sort of done that sort of acknowledgement of the time that we're in, there's still, you're still benefiting from this, or you're still sort of partaking in this collective experience. And this collective experience, I often think it's like, it's looking back, it's acknowledging the present, and it's also, of course, looking ahead, 2025. And, something around the coming together is like, we want to feel in this coming together, in this kind of partaking of a collective experience, we want to feel almost buoyed up. We want to feel inspired. We want to feel connected. We want to feel the aspirations of the group. We want to feel that somehow rubs off on us in some way. That joy of the fireworks sort of exploding in the air, or the kind of whatever the sound of that is. Now I think of more of the sound of a bonfire, because that's what we often do on retreat. Whatever that sound of that is, it sort of represents this kind of inspiration. It represents the sort of hopes. It represents the aspirations. It represents the fact that we want something to shift and be different, to change in our next year. And we sort of, I feel like it strengthens, that coming together will strengthen our intentions that we have. It's also a recognition that we don't know. None of us here in this room now or listening online, none of us, no one in the world, in fact, knows what's actually going to happen in 2025. It's all completely unknown. We can have our plans, aspirations, intentions, absolutely important, because you're setting a direction in that, but we actually don't know. So this kind of marking of this is like a kind of, we need the kind of others. We need others. We need the best of ourselves, and we need the best of others to kind of propel us into something positive, into what we feel and we think is what we're going to need for 2025. For me, I've often felt when I've had a good New Year, I felt the kind of connection. I felt like, I'm not on my own on this journey. There's others that care for me, that I care for, or who care for the kind of values that I hold dear, and that really supports me going forward. So we're marking the significance of this moment. We're looking ahead. We're looking back, and somewhere I feel, and it's not always conscious, but somewhere also I feel that in that we're acknowledging the passing of time. We're kind of saying, it's I'm living this life now, and somehow I want this next phase, this next year, to feel like I'm feeling like I'm really living well, and that this time I'm spending is well spent. And in that, sometimes there's a subtle anxiety as well that we're not doing that. That maybe we're not making the best use of our lives and our time. So there's something around acknowledging the significance of time itself. And it's important to, in that, time is finite. We know at some point, we're not going to be here. It's sort of like time's up, I sort of see it as a sort of like an escalator. I'm on the escalators, I'm looking at the adverts, I'm listening to my music, thinking about what I'm going to do next, thinking about what happened previously, and then the next thing, the last few steps are there, and it's like, you're off. That's how it can feel when you really take in the fact that, we don't have forever to make the best use of the life that we're in. And at the same time, it's important to, have a reflection of that is healthy. So there's two modes, I think. One is ignoring that, which I think mostly we do. We sort of like, let's not think about that. Let's not think about that because, it's not going to happen to me, which we know is not true, but that's kind of on some level how we think. So we kind of ignore it, push it away, don't think about it. And then, of course, life will kind of, do its thing. And then we're forced to think about it sometimes. And then other times we can think, oh gosh, we can actually feel anxious about it on some level. And that can produce other unhelpful things, like what's the point? Or even striving and being quite willful, like I remember having this, like, I've got to have as much experience as possible. I've got to go through, travel as many places as possible, do as many things as possible, because I've got to fit it all in. It's actually impossible to do everything. So you can go through either extremes, yeah? One is feel pressured by it in some way, or feel like ignore it completely and not allow it to influence you in a positive way. So in this kind of, acknowledging where we are, looking back at the past year, I feel like it's really important to acknowledge the positives that have happened, the shifts and insights, the challenges as well, and the growth that's come from those challenges. That is a really important, helpful thing to do, because it just gives you a sort of context to, okay, this is where I am now. And then you can be like, okay, what feels like would be a helpful development, helpful cultivation, helpful growth for the next year. I think the only other time we do that is probably our birthdays. That might be a time where we do that as well. But we don't do that in the same way collectively and globally. And it's not marked by the elements, because that's the other thing. We're in a particular we just had the solstice in this part of the world, so we're marked particularly seasonally as well. So I've got up here, and you can, when you at some point in the evening, have a look. The Tibetan Wheel of Life, except there's a real traditional image called the Tibetan Wheel of Life. And look online if you have not seen one. This is actually a very modern version. It was created last year. There's our creator here. When was it? When did you make it? Last year. It was last year, yeah. For a course that I was doing. So I actually am running another one in 2025 on the Wheel of Life. And I thought of it today because it's a real image that, like a lot of practitioners use. It's a very common image it's a very popular image in our movement. It's one that when I first came across it, I was like, gosh, there's a whole of human existence in this image. And I can keep looking at this image and keep learning about myself, about the world, about others, about life itself through this image. So it's got like these concentric circles. There's 1, 2, about 4 different concentric circles. And they all share something different about our human experience. So right at the very middle of it, there's these 3 animals. And these 3 animals represent what drives a lot of our human experience. What drives our human experience that ends up creating suffering. So that's greed or craving, hatred and ignorance right in the middle. And then you've got, our different ways of responding to our experience. So you've got a creative way of responding to something that can happen, and we can respond in a way that's thoughtful, considerate, reflective, responsive. We can just respond in a way that's beneficial, overall beneficial. And then we can respond in a way that is reactive, contracted, that separates us from others, or separates us from our deepest desires and needs. Yeah. So, and then you've got this next circle is around the different states humans dwell in, different psychological states, different actual states. So you've got the kind of like the heaven realm, which is where you have, where you're in bliss, everything's wonderful, you're sitting on the beach looking at the sunset, and just thinking, wow, this is it, or, you're just, you're very successful, things are going well for you in some way, yeah? And then another one is the hell realm, where it's like, yeah, life feels like hell right now. So, and there's these 6 different states that we can be in as human beings. And then the very outer edge, the very outer circle, is how it all happens, what makes up our human responses. And it tells us, this outer rim, how to free ourselves from the repetitive states that we get into. It sort of describes all the different aspects of what the mind does when it's in a reactive state, and then it shows you the way out, what to do about it. So I really love this image, and what you see, particularly if you see the traditional images, you'll see this kind of holding this whole wheel of human existence is this what looks like a monster. This one's he's got fangs, and he's called Yama, the Lord of, you could say the monster of impermanence. So the monster of impermanence is like holding the whole wheel. And he's basically saying, there's 2 ways of looking at him, but the one way is, we're not here forever. How do we make the most of this human existence? We're not here forever. And at one point, one day, we don't know when, we don't know how, it will be, this particular existence will be over. That frightens us. And that's kind of why we can see it as a kind of monster. It's like we don't want to look at that. But the other way of seeing Yama is the Lord of change, the Lord of transformation. Because the other way of seeing our human experience is it's a myriad opportunities for transformation, for discovering what it is to be human, to discovering the kind of vastness of human consciousness, of life itself. So he also stands and says, yes, this is a precious opportunity. Make the most of it. So what it says in terms of the way out of the wheel, there is a point where there's a gap between our sort of habitual, kind of repetitive, or this is where I've I always end up here. Have you had that experience where you're like, you've changed something in your life, but then you find yourself having a similar experience? Yeah? And that's because there's a kind of we have a conditioned response that will then just respond to a new set of details with a similar way. And so this wheel shows you, this is what you need to do. You have to create a gap in your experience. You have the experience, and if it's unpleasant, we have an instinctive thing that we don't want it. So we have the experience, and rather than just react to it, we create a gap, we create a space where we actually begin to reflect. And through that reflection, there's the opportunity to create a different response. And through that, creating that different response, we have the opportunity to free ourselves from that particular repetitive way of being. So in a sense, that's what the wheel does. The wheel shows you this kind of what goes on, just so we can become really familiar with, what life is, how our life is showing up, what's going on in other people's lives. We learn from other people as well. And what's going on in the world, all of that is in this wheel. And the more we can see the kind of links and connections and the shapes of things, the more we're prepared to go, okay, I need to step back. I'm not going to fix it all. I'm not just going to, it's not wishful thinking is not going to keep working. I've got to do something different. I've got to create a space. And that's what meditation gives you, of course. Meditation gives you that space to choose and see a different way of being and responding. And what's great about this is that you have the wheel where we're caught in this repetitive, habitual cycle. But then the response takes us off the wheel. So the response takes us into something that is transformative, that is transcendent. It takes us from just being in the situation and not knowing what to do or just reacting our habitual way to actually finding a different response, a creative response. And in that response, we discover our confidence and we discover faith and we discover joy, because it's when you're in a creative mode, it's expansive. It's lighter, it's brighter, it's more connected to others and to yourself. I think we can do it in here. I just wanted a little... So yes, what I'd like you to do is just to turn to somebody in the room and just say your name. And then just to identify, something, a repetitive something in your life that you're aware, come 2025, you feel like ready to let go of. It's been there long enough and you're ready to let go of it. So just turn to somebody and just have that brief conversation. Yeah. Wow. Loads to change then. Anyone happy to share? Just one or two?
We both have very similar ones, which were about letting go of operating from a place of lack, or a fear about lack, or somehow wanting to compensate for a perception that has lack.
Yeah, fear, a lack, sense of lack, operating from that, in many different ways that can show up. Yeah, great, thank you. Any others?
Us three are very much either stuck in the past or the future. And so we were talking about noticing that and going into 2025, just letting go of more and more of that and allowing ourselves to be in the present.
Right, yeah. And it's actually it's easier said than done, right? It's like, let's be in the present, but that actually involves a whole shift. Yeah. Any one more? Let's hear one more.
I think we talk about open the heart, isn't it?
Yeah, and for some reason in our conversation, I just got an idea of the poem by David White, and I think I heard it from you first.
Okay.
And I was trying to remember it.
I won't remember right now. Sorry, David.
So I promised to look at my phone later.
Yeah, great.
But it's about knowing that, basically knowing what's good for you and not forgetting it. Just sitting here.
Yes.
And coming back to it again and again. Something like that.
Knowing what's good for you and not forgetting it.
Yeah.
That's a good one, isn't it? I'm going to have to get that poem out again. Did you have one that you wanted to share?
Yeah. I was just thinking, 2023 was more like very focused on work and kind of trying to succeed and sort of succeeding in a very limited way.
Yeah.
And then 2024, it was like almost, I wasn't on my true calling or my true path. And I was sort of talking about Buddhism. I was saying, I used to come to this centre when I was in my 20s, 30 years ago.
Wow.
And I really
Wow.
that's a different sort of place as well. But it's like that kind of feeling of when you kind of go off the path, you've got this kind of calling in your Buddhism or your spirituality.
Yeah.
That's kind of, okay, this life is very limited, it's short, but beyond that, you're doing the work, the spiritual work, which at times can feel like, well, why are other people not struggling? Why is, I'm having to go through this, but those are our wisdoms.
Yeah, great, yeah. Yeah, so what I'm getting is like you've been putting energy in a particular area of your life, which is work, and that was a kind of real focus, but somehow felt that even though you're doing that, not fully connecting to really what matters most. It's kind of what you said around doing what's good for you and not forgetting, not forgetting it. I really like these examples because, anyone say more money? You could say that, couldn't you? Actually, that's what I want in 2025. Money, fit body. You could. We have all these other lists that go on as well, right? And in a way, I like these examples because they are sort of unpacking what our core experience is much more. A sense of lack can show up in so many different ways. It's like it's really, it's on this wheel. You have the kind of realm of the hungry ghost who's never quite satisfied. Nothing's ever quite enough. So always looking for something, always feeling impoverished in some way. Yeah. So that can be as much of a mental thing as anything else. Yeah. Feeling like we're not fully connecting with why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. We're doing stuff. It even might be really appreciated what we're doing. I've been in situations or jobs where we're like, oh, fantastic. And then I get to feel after a while, I'm like, yeah, but is this what I should be doing now? Maybe it was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, but now? So I feel like your examples you've given really go to sort of much more the core of our experience. And then we have this other list, which is the external manifestations or the external things that also, are driving, and that's full of, social media is full of that at the moment, all the kind of, the better this, the bigger that, the, more of this, that's also there often in our experience as well. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, actually, in a sense. You might need to change your car, you might need to learn to drive, it could be all, it's all fine. It's just a question of, what are the purpose of those things and what our real motivation is. And are we sort of clear on that? Often if you put all the energy into the external sort of manifestation or expression of something, actually when you achieve it, and I've definitely had this experience, when you've achieved it, it was like it can be like, was that it? What about I thought that because what's happened, we've gone for it, whatever it is, and we've achieved it, so tick, we can do this thing. But maybe we haven't changed the way it hasn't really changed us the way we thought it would. It hasn't fundamentally changed our experience. Because often what we're looking for in I want this, I want that, I want to develop this, I want to discover that, I want to achieve this. What we're looking for, when you strip all the kind of externals away, what we're actually looking for is a shift in consciousness. What we're actually looking for is to experience ourselves and the world differently as a result of that thing. It's like, they've done this research, haven't they, on people that win the lottery. And it's like, I don't remember the percentages, but it's a high percentage of people that win the lottery end up losing all the money within a few years. And, part of it is, it's just arrived. They've done the numbers, like lots of people do the numbers. And then this thing that they've dreamed of, that they thought would change their whole lives and change their relationships and make life feel like, the Instagram scrolls that I was, reels that I was seeing today, make it feel like that. It doesn't happen. Because actually they still have the similar ways of communicating. They still have similar kind of friendships and relationships. They still have their outlook on life. They still have the very lenses and filters going on. So we're really down to a very fundamental aspect of Buddhism here. And this is this book, the Dhammapada, we don't have a Bible in Buddhism. There's lots of different important texts, but this is one of them, and it's the words of the Buddha who lived, 2,500 years ago. And the very first lines of it are this: experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows, even as a cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows, like a shadow that never departs. So it's our consciousness, it's our mind, our hearts that make the difference, that changes how we experience whatever it is in our lives. And when I first came across that, it really helped me understand why, I grew up with 3 sisters. And, we're quite close in our different ways. We would all be present at a certain event in our family. And then we talk about it years later, and we all had completely different perspectives and experiences of that same event. And I was always like, how did you see it like that? How did you see it? And it was only over time I think, oh yeah, but how we then interpret that event, the lens or filter that we had, then affects what I then saw in my family, then affects how the next thing is interpreted. And the next thing is seen or felt. And that then affects the next thing. So I was like, wow, it's really is the fundamental thing. So in Buddhism, really, it's basically saying you can, try and do all the things on the list of the experiences, like if you went into a self-development bookshop right now, or any scrolling on any Instagram or anything like that, you'd see the list of different things that people are wanting for 2025. And, if you went into a self-development bookstore like I used to do when there were more bookstores around, there'd just be every single book on every single subject, on your finances, on your health, on your house, on your garden, on your relationships, on your communication, on your sex life. Every topic would be there. And it's like, I remember once being in a bookshop and thinking, I can't, which one do I start with? I can't do it all. And then I don't have to. There's a real drive I think it's I don't know if it's a Western thing, but a modern thing, but a real drive for perfection. Like I've got to tick the boxes. I've got to, do all the things on the bucket list and tick all the boxes and show that I'm making the best use of things. That is a real strong, whether it's cultural, I don't know, drive. And it actually is a lot of pressure. Because we can't necessarily, and it's not, why would we want to master every single, be great at cooking, be great at sewing, but why would we want to, be a triathlete? There's some things I've just taken off taken off the list. I won't be a triathlete in this lifetime. And it's absolutely okay. Because what matters is the way my mind, heart is, and how I then respond to and experience the world. And that is like lenses. It's like clearing the filters, that actually obscure how I see things. And then adopting a view, learning to see from a view that is expansive. That is true. That is connected. And that's ultimately compassionate. So I was trying to think of how do you describe this sort of the transcendent aspect of things? We know we could talk a lot again and again about the human experience as we ordinarily experience it, but there's this transcendent, transformative spiral that actually, according to the Buddhism, the Dharma leads all the way to enlightenment, leads all the way to liberation. How do you describe that? Because we don't see that very often in our culture, that actually what real positive growth looks like. And it's hard to describe, really. It's hard to describe. But I had immediately as I thought that, I had two images that came to mind. One of them was me on a plane. So I talk about this particular experience quite a lot because it's why I'm here. One of the reasons why I'm here today. The thing that got me off my, armchair of kind of, one day I'll do the right thing and be wise and learn to be wise. But right now I've got all these things I want to achieve. It's what got me off that. And it was just being in a plane that, it was coming all the way from the Philippines. So it was a long journey. And somewhere in the middle of the journey, the plane started running into difficulty and, heavy turbulence, which went on for a little while and then seemed to get worse at a certain point. And the staff got really, I remember they were shouting at us and they looked really stressed, which of course made us really stressed. And before long, the aircraft was one of crying and praying and lots of rosaries because lots of Catholics on board. We all thought, what's going to happen to this plane? Are we going to make it? And for me, I was quite young at the time, and I looked around and I could see all the tears, I could see all the shouting, I could see the kind of, people praying, and I was like, oh, I've got nothing to pray to, actually, because I'd already decided I didn't believe in God. So I was like, I can't suddenly, you know about that conversation. But I was talking to someone. It was really strange. I was like, excuse me, this can't be happening because I'm young and I haven't really lived. So I can't be ending, my life can't be ending now. So it was like, stop. Like, I wanted the time to stop. I wanted it to kind of reverse on some level. So I was kind of having this kind of, it wasn't quite bargaining, but it was definitely like, no, no, no. And then it was like, yes, yes, yes. Me saying that wasn't going to be enough to change things. And then I was like, who's looking after me on this plane? I'm in a lot of fear and terror right now, but I could see everybody was in their own little worlds. Parents were helping children, but other than that, everyone was in their own world. And I could, my whole body was like rigid with fear. And the main thing was like, I haven't lived enough. And I don't think it was an age thing, actually, just an age thing. It was a feeling that I hadn't been more myself somehow. I hadn't connected deeply enough with myself and others. So I don't know what sort of came into my mind, but at that point I looked out the window of the plane and then was completely transfixed, because the scene before me was like a vision, was like this mystical sky. I think I wrote a poem at the time called Mystical Sky. And it was this sky that was like all the colours of the rainbow, with this great, so the oranges and reds and purples, and then this great expanse of black and a huge star. And it just took my breath away. And I just stared at it for ages until some point, I don't know what happened, like time, it could have been an hour, could have been 10 minutes, could have been 5, I have no idea. What I do know is that when I eventually turned back into the plane, we were still dropping lots of feet. Turbulence was still going on. People were still crying and praying, but I was different. My body was relaxed. And I noticed that I was breathing. I realized before that I wasn't breathing. Or at least my breath, I don't know, I was holding my breath somehow. Suddenly I was breathing. Suddenly I felt my body. Suddenly I looked around me, and rather than me going, oh, well, who's looking out for me here? I could feel and see the suffering in the plane. And it was such a shift in experience. So the situation hadn't changed. I was still in the same existential situation. But there was such a shift in my consciousness that I knew that there was something really significant in this moment. And what came was, yes, I want the plane to land, like I still want it to land, because I really want to live now. And out of it came these questions, which is, how do I live? How do I live so that when I die, I can die without regret? And how do I love? I knew they were connected somehow. So that was one experience, and I sort of share it to show the kind of change that can happen in a single moment, actually. In a single moment that actually changed my whole experience of that event. And the other one happened a few years after. So I then, ended up meditating and, looking for, oh yeah, that's the other thing I realized at the time. I had these questions and I was like, I don't know the answers to these questions. These questions emerged out from somewhere, I don't know. But I knew I didn't have the answer to the questions. So what was I going to do about that? I knew I couldn't just, we didn't have Google in those days. I knew that I wouldn't find it in just one book. Like somehow I needed to, I knew I needed to find books, but I also needed to find people who have done this before. And I knew that I'm not the first to have those kind of questions. That was a really important moment for me to go, oh, you're not the first to have these questions. Therefore, somewhere along the line, someone must have found the answers or be further along than I am. So that's how I started my search. And then the other one was a dream that I had a few years after that. So I was already involved, already meditating, very engaged in practice. And the dream was me walking down this path. I was walking down this path, or a bridge. But the main thing about it was that it was a grey landscape. Everything was grey. And this bridge, the end of the path, the bridge, I couldn't see the end of it. It was just this long grey scene. And I was just walking and walking and walking, walking. Didn't know where I was going. If you'd have asked me where I'm going, I wouldn't. I'm just walking. That's what you just do. You just walk. But at a certain point in the journey, I wasn't enjoying it. It was just what I was doing. Certain point in the journey, I've noticed that my neck's hurting. And I'm just like, ow, I've got this pain in my neck. I ignore it for a little while, keep going. And then it occasionally gets really painful and I have to stop. How am I going to carry on walking on this journey with this pain? But I carry on and it just repeats itself. And then I hear a voice. And the voice says, turn to the right. I'm just like, what? I'm not turning to the right. And I keep walking. And the pain's in the right, my neck is telling me to turn to the right. I don't understand that. I just keep walking. And it keeps repeating this voice. It's gentle. It's not pressurizing. It just drops it in. When I stop with the pain, turn to the right. And at some point on this path, and it feels like I've been going forever now, at some point, the pain gets really intense and I stop. And I'm like, there's a right. There is a right that I can turn to. And I do it. I turn my neck, my head to the right. And the whole scene changes in this dream. There's no longer this grey path that's endless. It's this scene of light. I'm in all this golden light, orange is light, just light, and I'm uplifted. And I woke up from that dream feeling very different, actually. I remember feeling like, wow, what was that about, you know? But I felt different in myself. I felt like there's always a way if I can hear the truth of my experience. And actually, that dream, I sort of learnt from for some time after. There was different aspects of that dream would come into mind, and I learnt from it for many years, I would say. But you know, I would say one of the things about being human, which is a wonderful thing, and why it's such an opportunity to be human, is because we're so mysterious as people. There's so much more to us than we realise. And that's why Buddhism, we have a lot of images, we have a lot of symbols, and dreams are very significant. Because we have our everyday self that, you know, gets up and does this and goes to work or whatever it does. And then we have our past, our conditioned selves, all our past experiences. And then we have our imaginal selves, our imaginations. And then we have our spiritual selves. And our spiritual selves is really not impacted, really. Is that right? Not necessarily not impacted, but our spiritual selves are not defined by the experiences we have in life. Any experience you have in life doesn't have to define you. And our spiritual selves says that. And our imaginal selves can imagine different possibilities for us. So the two coming together is very powerful, our imagination and our spiritual selves. We don't have to be defined by any of our past experiences. So, and I remember talking to a friend of mine, she was ordained and I wasn't ordained at that point, and I was telling her some problem I had and I was going on, and at some point she stopped me and she said, okay, there's more to you than you think you know. And now part of me thought, why is she telling me that now? I want to talk about the details of this thing. But actually it went in as well, because I thought, is there? And what she was really saying is your consciousness is bigger than this. Your mind is bigger than this. Your heart is bigger than this. Open it up, expand it. And then you'll respond to this particular issue very differently. So, yeah, I've learned a lot from images and symbols and dreams. It sort of operates on a different level to just our rational mind. We need both. We need our rational mind as well. But we also need the things that really touch our hearts and help us reflect and go deeper with our understandings. So Yama, this Lord of change and transformation, he says that this human birth, this human life is a precious opportunity. And you could see the challenges you have as opportunities for growth, for healing, for transformation, for transcendence. That's really what they're there. One way of looking at life is say that's what they're there for. Because actually, do we grow if things are if everything was like easy and comfortable all of the time? Would we make much effort to grow? I speak for myself. I know I probably wouldn't, because I quite like my comforts. And I quite like things to be easy. And part of me doesn't really want to make any effort. And part of me doesn't want to acknowledge the situation I'm in. And I think that's the thing about this long path, this grey road I was travelling on, or bridge. It's like it was just going on and on and on. And I'm getting some information or guidance to say, look, you can change this. But I'm like, no, let me just keep ploughing on. This is just how it is. This is just how I am. This is just how life is. A sort of willful ignorance. Or it might be the cravings that just keep you hooked in. So we have those things as well. We have that about our experience as well. We have this, it's a precious opportunity. Life is a precious opportunity because we all have the kind of potential for growth and transformation and for liberation, for freedom, for compassion. But it's covered over by all our conditioning, all our filters that just obscures our view. But it's saying that's okay. You're going to discover those things too on the journey. You're going to discover those things, but it's okay because in the discovery of those things, you release them. And you can actually help show others the way. Oh, when they're in that as well, like, oh, it's okay. You can just take off those filters now. So it's a great opportunity. It's a challenge. If we take on life in this way, and we're not just pursuing the externals, it can be a challenge. But it's a challenge that brings so much light. A challenge that brings so much joy. Somebody had a t-shirt. Is it you? Yeah, more joy. But it's not a joy. It's not that happiness that ricochets back to deep suffering. I've had those moments as well. It's like, oh, like you're intoxicated and it's all really wonderful, but then boom, back. It's not that kind of joy. It's a joy that is based on awareness. In this wheel and the spiral, it says, your awareness of suffering, if you're aware of suffering, not just in it, but aware of it, you're already on the path. So me being in the plane, going, oh, what about me? What about me? You know, I was in the suffering. I wasn't really aware of it. I was in it. Me going, oh my goodness, and looking out the window there's awareness of suffering. Me looking around, everybody else go, oh, we're all in the same boat here. That's awareness of suffering. That's the beginning of the path. And then out of that, there's some confidence. So somehow or other, I had a confidence or trust, faith, that this feels true. This experience I'm having, where I'm looking around and realising we're all in the same boat, realising, gosh, life is finite, isn't it? And I want to make the best use of it. That feels like confidence, faith, trust. I knew for myself that if I was able to work directly on my mind and my consciousness and my heart, that the rest of my life would somehow work itself out. And I had to do it that way around rather than, you know, do everything else I thought I needed to do and then at the end go, oh, did I miss something? Your consciousness, your mind, your heart will dictate, will influence all your experience. So what Buddhism says, what Dharma says, is work on that directly. Come into relationship with others who are doing so. Make the space. Make the space so you can see your responses and you can find your own truths there and find a creative response. And create the conditions. Create the conditions for yourself and others so that we as a group of people, we as a community, can actually stand for something in the world. Because the world really needs compassionate beings. It needs wise, compassionate beings. It needs beings who stand for truth. And who live in joy. That's all. Thank you. We can have a break now, and then we'll do a ritual. In both two separate rooms, and that will take us into the new year. And we will bring in. There'll be joy in this that will stay with us. Yeah, if we keep creating the conditions. So I'll see you at the ritual.
Thank you.